Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have Tom Nichols back with us. We'll chat with Tom in just a moment, but first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. All right, so let's get to the big thing of the week, which was the primary Tuesday in Michigan. Friend of the podcast, Jocelyn Benson, won her race to become the Democratic nominee for governor. But the big news was the victory, albeit a very close victory by 1 point, by physician and progressive and capitalist. It's important to stress this because he's being painted as a socialist communist. I mean, you could disagree with him on many things, which I do, but you can't call him a socialist or a communist. He's a capitalist. He literally says, I am a capitalist. I believe in capitalism. Okay? Abdul El-Sayed. He won the United States Senate primary in the Democratic Party this week, defeating Haley Stevens, Congresswoman from Michigan. That was a big thing.
It was huge. Huge. He's got the Riz.
Yeah, I give him credit. He's a fantastic campaigner.
Mm-hmm.
He looks good. He sounds good. He's very articulate. He's camera ready. He's personable. He's got some great taglines, take the money out of Washington and put it back in your pocket, like that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
His message is resonating. And the truth is, if you put aside, and I say this as a Jew, if you put aside the Israel stuff, which is where I have a problem with him, I don't necessarily have a problem with him everywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, he is speaking to what people want. They don't want the war in Iran. They want health care, and they don't want incremental change. They want real change. They've had it. They've had it with the middle. They've had it with moderates. They want someone who's going to listen and do for them.
Yeah, look, I do not appreciate, and I can't support the things he says about Israel.
Mm-hmm.
You could be against this war with Gaza. You could be against Netanyahu. You can feel that the reaction to October 7th at this point has been overkill, literally and figuratively, right? But he doesn't believe Israel should exist. And that's a problem for me. But I think the Jews in Michigan who aren't the progressive, I'll call them the genocidal Jews, okay? Because that makes everybody understand exactly who I'm talking about. If you supported Haley Stevens, or if you're a moderate Jewish person in Michigan, I just think you have to look beyond this one issue. There's too much at stake overall. I just think you got to look at, the big picture. The big picture is Trump and democracy. If you really believe democracy is hanging on by a thread, ask yourself this one question. Do you in your heart of hearts believe that our democracy for the next 2 years or forever, with an unfettered Trump who is not held accountable by Congress, do you believe our democracy is going to be dead? Because if you do, nothing else matters, okay? Not abortion, not trans, not anything, not Israel, nothing matters. So that has to come before everything. So that's my advice. My hold your nose, groan, do whatever you got to do. But we have to take the Senate, and that means El-Sayed has to beat Mike Rogers. That is it.
Yeah, it's complicated. I was going to say the same thing. Just like a bunch of people voted against Kamala. They didn't necessarily vote for Trump, but of course they did vote for Trump. They held their nose, and here we are. But so as much as I agree with you, and I do, and it is the most important thing for democracy, I think there has to be a little bit of both ways. I mean, you can't just always be moderates being like, yeah, I'm completely in. This is really important. I'm going to see it from the progressives' point of view. And, I'm being logical and rational. The progressives have to do that, too. The progressives in states where moderates have won, they need to rally behind them, too. I just think that it's really important to say that out loud.
Yes.
We all have to get together in one big unanimous, happy family.
There has to be party unity. But again, I'm a strategic person. So whenever I do something or take positions, I first must identify what is my ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal of every single Democrat, I don't care what your stripe is. I don't care if you're part of the DSA or you're a moderate or part of the so-called establishment. You know who the establishment is? Donald Trump and the Republican Party. That's the establishment because they're in power, they control everything, and they are making our lives miserable. So winning the midterms is the only goal right now because nothing else matters. So you have to ask yourself, whatever I do, does that serve this goal? Do I get closer to Democrats taking the Senate if I protest and don't vote for El-Sayed? It's very simple. Be a grown-up and ask yourself those questions and then make the tough choice because that's what this is. In life, we have tough choices. We don't have purity tests. So you can not vote for El-Sayed and then he could lose. And that could be the difference if the Republican Party picks up a seat, right? How would you feel if Democrats win Iowa and they win Texas and they win Maine and they win Alaska and they could have won the Senate, but Republicans pick up Michigan?
I think I'm going to put aside some of that because we all differ here on our views on some of this. But I would think the interesting thing about this is the reaction from the right. And they have so let the racist genie out of the bottle that their base is so infected that what we saw also in Michigan was Amir Hassan, who was a Navy veteran, Trump endorsed in June, rallied in Michigan and basically lost to someone who had already left, suspended his campaign, and spent nothing while this person spent millions. And the only reason they lost is because people in Trump's base saw Amir Hassan and thought he was some sort of Islamic fundamentalist terrorist instead of the actual Christian that he is and someone who grew up in Michigan, is second generation. I mean, what we're seeing is such hatred and anti-Islamic behavior that El-Sayed has activated this really vile core of MAGA. And I think that if that bleeds over into independence is what I'm more concerned about than anything else.
But you're substantiating my point here. Because of that, that's another reason why Democrats have to put aside whatever opposition they might have to him on a policy position or another. And again, I say that as a Jew. I am repulsed by some of the things I've heard him say about Israel. And I've said this before on this podcast. You know, he may not be anti-Semitic because he's attacking Netanyahu and Israel, but the rhetoric of people like him and Mamdani might trigger the anti-Semites. Because to them, Israel, Zionism, Netanyahu, they're all the same. They all mean Jew in the end. So I have a hard time with El-Sayed. Now, the flip side to this is that he has no mandate. He didn't even get a majority of voters. He got 48%. He won by 1 point. So Michigan is really split. And your point is a good one about independence, is that if he wants to win, it's not just up to the voters. It's up to how he campaigns. He needs to move a little to the center. He needs to tone down the inflammatory rhetoric. He needs to be able to appeal not just to Jews and non-Jews. He needs to appeal to the independents. He needs to appeal to farmers. He needs to appeal to people in rural Michigan. He needs to appeal to the black population, which he has a problem with. You know, he has to be the candidate who can demonstrate to everyone in the Democratic Party, I will be your senator. I will be your senator. Now, part of the criticism of El-Sayed is that he's cocky. He's arrogant. He thinks a lot of himself. So he runs the risk on the campaign trail of being entitled, of having an attitude that he expects to be senator. He has to suck it up a little bit, tone down his rhetoric, and appeal to the masses. This race is so important. And I just want to say to people, do you believe democracy is dying? If you believe we may not have a democracy by 2028, it's fight or flight, baby. What are you going to do? Now is not a time to have intelligent conversations about principle. Now is a time to do whatever you need to do to win. And we have to take the Senate. All right, let's get to our winners and losers. I'll start. My winner, Abdul El-Sayed, who became the first Muslim major party Senate nominee and could become the first Muslim to serve in the United States Senate if he wins in November. My loser, Ohio Rep. Max Miller, the former son-in-law of Ohio Senator Bernie Moreno, for his defiance in the face of accusations of spousal abuse and claims of physical abuse and or harassment with other women.
My winner, Public Health. The Senate confirmed Dr. Erica Schwartz as the new CDC director, who is a supporter of childhood vaccines. My loser for the second week in a row, Todd Blanche, who said this week the Department of Justice is working with federal health agencies to restrict mail-in abortion pills and make the Dobbs decision permanent nationwide.
My winner is also Abdul El-Sayed, Rhodes Scholar, epidemiologist, physician. El-Sayed just won Michigan's Democratic Senate primary, and he won it as a progressive Democrat. My loser is Bill Cassidy. Without scruple or spine, he announced his support for Todd Blanche this morning, giving Blanche the final vote needed to confirm him as Attorney General.
Well, that gets us to our weekly rant. So once again, the big cabinet vote came down to Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy, the physician who last year cast the deciding vote to confirm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as HHS Secretary. And so now he was again in the political hot seat and potentially in Donald Trump's crosshairs over the nomination of acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, because Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski both declared they will vote no on his confirmation. Cassidy, you recall, had his political career ended by Trump when he primaried him because with Trump, the critical Kennedy vote wasn't enough. Because the truth is, with Trump, it's never enough. Because in Cassidy's case, he voted in February of 2021 to convict Trump on his second impeachment trial over the January 6th insurrection. And given that the big lie, the so-called rigged 2020 election, is the blood that runs through Trump's whiny, corrupt veins, he can't forget what Cassidy did to him. But that's the past. The eventual vote on Blanche's confirmation is the present. And Cassidy had nothing to lose by voting no. Just like Senators Thom Tillis and John Cornyn, whose performative righteous indignation over Blanche delayed the vote to move the Blanche nomination out of committee for a nanosecond over the $1.8 billion J6 slush fund and Trump's IRS immunity deal, they had nothing to lose. And now they've said they'll vote to confirm Blanche when the full committee votes. So the big question was, did Cassidy shamelessly capitulate in the end, like Tillis and Cornyn? The thing about Cornyn and Tillis that I don't understand is that they were so insistent that Blanche, in essence, was corrupt because he was willing to create an illegal slush fund and negotiate the illegal IRS immunity deal. But now they're totally fine with Blanche. That's like voting for someone for school board, and you find out they robbed a deli. So you meet with them to insist they return the money before you can vote for them. What a fucking lame attempt at morality. And now Cassidy faced the opportunity to somewhat repair his legacy, to have a moment like the dying Senator John McCain in 2017 with his thumbs-down deciding vote, which saved Obamacare. To go out as the senator who kept a dangerous Trump capo from officially further weaponizing the Department of Justice while assaulting the rule of law and our democracy. You know, maybe that's it. Maybe you just have to be dying in order to go against Trump. Maybe literally being dead is the only way you will feel comfortable going against Trump. Because at that point, there's nothing, literally nothing he can do to you. Now, the votes against Blanche wouldn't stop Blanche from remaining in his current job as acting AG because Trump had said he'll just keep him in that position regardless. But it would demonstrate that on some level, Senator Cassidy still has a modicum of integrity and self-respect. So what would Cassidy do? Well, just a few minutes ago, he announced he'll be supporting Blanche's nomination. He'll vote to confirm the most corrupt AG in American history, knowing everything he knows about him. Just as he, as a physician, voted to confirm a dangerous nutbag to lead our nation's healthcare system. What a weak, feckless coward. All right, so let's get to Tom Nichols. Tom is a staff writer at The Atlantic and a contributor to the Atlantic Daily newsletter. Tom, welcome back into the back room.
Hey, thanks, Andy. It's good to see you again.
So I want to start with the war in Iran. We're now in the 6th month of what was supposed to be a 2-week military action. Are we losing this war, or have we lost it already?
We lost it.
How so?
The fact that we're negotiating over, who gets to control the Strait of Hormuz, even on Trump's own terms, when he laid out all these things at the very beginning of the war, that all started with regime change. Now, of course, they deny that. We were never interested in regime change. Well, of course you weren't, because you didn't achieve it. But even the things that then Rubio tried to list afterwards, we haven't achieved any of them. Nothing. In fact, we're worse off than we were 6 months ago. And you know that I'm a pretty strong Trump critic. But I'm saying this, as an analyst of international affairs, trying to be as unbiased as I can. And I don't see it. I don't see any way that we're better off. We've spent down a lot of very important arms. We've lost some people. Our allies in the Gulf are rattled. For people that didn't want us to have a better relationship with Israel, now we have a terrible relationship with Israel. It pains me as an American of my age who lived through the Cold War and everything that came after, to say that we have actually lost a war to one of our worst enemies. But I think honesty requires saying that out loud.
So where do we go from here? How does it end?
It doesn't. I mean, the situation that Trump has created in the Gulf does not end. Iran isn't going anywhere. This is just going to be, I'll say this, he was consequential. He changed the dynamics in the Middle East, just not in our favor. Where it goes for us as a country, I suspect, is that Trump finally just says, as he often does, I got everything I wanted. It was a great deal. I'm the best at making deals. And then we come home.
So more propaganda, gaslighting, lies.
It all went great. It's a resounding victory. We're the best. And then he comes home and we just kind of deal with the fact that Iran has established that it can choke the world economy, anytime it wants to. Had he actually toppled this regime, I would have, like a lot of people, whether we like Donald Trump or not, we would have said, congratulations. Okay, because it's a terrible regime. Nobody wants it there. They really are a malignancy. That regime is a malignancy. But this is the worst of all worlds, which is that he attacked them and failed.
Well, he's got a younger, angrier Ayatollah whose entire family was murdered by Trump. And so what has changed? Nothing's changed.
Well, and the IRGC now is, saying, okay, see, we are surrounded. This is who the Americans are. One of the reasons that I was never in favor of attacking Iran, like a lot of other folks, and I'm not a Persia specialist. I don't speak Farsi. But one thing I think we all understood is that there are tens of millions of people in Iran who were actually feeling pretty positive about the United States. They hated their own government. They looked to the United States. And that was reason enough to say, let's find other ways to do this, because we don't want to kill a lot of people who agree with us, and that we might need later on if and when this regime can be brought down. And now, the theocrats and the IRGC are saying, see, it's now, and they're executing people. I mean, last week they executed like 50 people for national security reasons. I mean, it's given them the excuse to crack down. Now, is Iran weaker than it was before the war? Militarily, yeah, we broke a lot of their stuff, but their answer, it's that possibly apocryphal story at the beginning of a book about Vietnam that is nonetheless, I guess Stephen Colbert would say it's truthy, which is that it might not be true, but it should be. An American colonel claims in that book to have talked to his North Vietnamese counterpart, and he says, "You never defeated us on the battlefield." And the North Vietnamese colonel says, "That's true." it's also irrelevant.
That's right. Well, in his head, Trump was fighting a traditional war, not an asymmetric war, and like Vietnam, where you had people in the jungle doing all kinds of crazy things. But, you know, the fact that he now compares the length of this war to, like, hey, Vietnam was 10 years or whatever. Like, so now he went from this is going to be 2 weeks to as long as it's not 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, he reasons. I mean, he is so childlike in his reasoning. Or, you know, it's like, well, Vietnam was 10 years. Well, that doesn't. Who cares that Vietnam? You know, that's not the point.
Right.
The point is, you started a war without knowing what you're doing, with one clear objective: you're going to topple the regime, which you believed was possible because you listened to Bibi Netanyahu, you know, whispering in your ear about glory. You thought that, you know, you were going to march through Tehran and, you know, they were going to sing songs about Donald Trump. And it didn't happen. And it doesn't matter how long Vietnam was. Doesn't matter how long we've stayed in Korea. You started a war, you lost it, and you're not, the president, you're not dealing with the American people honestly about this. You know, probably not being honest with yourself. I wrote a piece in the Atlantic a few days ago where I said he's always been not the brightest guy, not the most reasonable guy, but I really think he has transitioned into becoming a kind of cocooned, irrational authoritarian, where he's almost Putin-like in the sense that there's nobody that tells him the truth. He doesn't want to hear the truth. He wants to see footage of, you know, shit blowing up, and doesn't just won't kind of comprehend what's happened here.
Yeah, I think, you know, speaking for the American people, because I'm one of them, you know, we want answers. We want a clear strategy here. We want to know why something that was supposed to take 2 weeks is now in its 6 months. And to your point, looking worse than ever, or that we've lost this thing. From a humanitarian perspective, initially, he set out with the right goal of like, hey, Iranian people, you know, I'm going to clear the path for you to rise up and take back your country. And then what was it, like 2 weeks later, he's threatening to annihilate their entire civilization.
Well,
so
he said that. Well, he said that without doing any of the prep work, you know, of saying, okay, we've got special op guys, we've got CIA, we've got, you know, we've scattered arms throughout the country, we've organized people, and when we're done bombing all these military targets, we didn't do any of that. You know, this is a country of 93 million people that is geographically pretty large. You know, it's about the size of 3 or 4 countries in Western Europe. If you look at that map overlaid, I mean, this was not going to be, you weren't just going to bomb them and then have the regime say, wow, that was terrible, we quit. That regime has been, you know, the one thing that the Trump folks, I think, have a legit point on is we've been in a state of kind of a Cold War with Iran for 47 years. No doubt about it. I mean, I was in college when the hostages were taken. I remember that, you know, vividly. But they've been waiting for 47 years. They've been preparing for this. It's not like we started bombing them and they went, oh, no one's ever thought of this. What will we do? They were ready for this, and we weren't, because Trump was still on this sugar buzz, this complete sugar high from Venezuela, which is a totally different place, totally different operation, and thought that, you know, well, sure, kidnapping one guy, you know, just south of our border, you know, in Latin America, and defeating a nation, 93 million people that have been expecting war with us for almost 5 decades, same thing. And this is what happens when you have clowns in charge of everything. Now, I have to shout out 2 members, at least according to the New York Times, you have to shout out 2 members of the administration. Ratcliffe, the CIA director, who said this is nuts, and Rubio, who literally apparently used the word bullshit, that, you know, that Netanyahu is like literally feeding you bullshit. And then he just went and did it anyway. And now can't explain it. And he's got Pete Hegseth, you know, who totally in over his head, has no idea what he's doing. gets quizzed by Trump about why are we running out of weapons, and Hegseth, like the manly high T leader that he is, turns and says, well, my deputy did it. I throws his deputy under the bus, which is, always the sign of a stand-up guy. So here we are. And I think I was never in favor of war with Iran, but if you're going to do it, then do it, and do what you have to do to topple the regime. But that includes ground troops, and I don't think anybody wants that. So you're right. We are owed answers about what happened to billions of dollars, 18 American lives, hundreds wounded. What are we doing here?
The problem to me, and you alluded to this a few moments ago, is that we have a president who is chaotic but thinks he's competent. He's ignorant. He thinks he's smart. He's a coward deep down, but he thinks he's a strong man. He's really a loser who thinks he's a winner. And so you put all that together and toss in some, salad dressing and malignant narcissism and sociopathy, and what do you get? You get this. You get it all. You get all the chaos.
There's one more piece. There's one more ingredient in that rancid stew, and that is the people around him.
Yeah.
Who are all sitting around. It's like that, and I know, I've used, I don't know if I've done it with you, but I've used that example before. It's like that Twilight Zone episode with the kid, with the omnipotent kid who can wish you into the cornfield, and everybody's saying, it's good. That's good, Anthony. It's good what you did. That's a good day.
Right.
Yeah, this is great. We're all happy. There's no, John Kelly or Jim Mattis or anybody to walk in there and say, this is all hosed up. You've got to do something about this. Everybody, gives them a golf clap. And the problem is that the one guy, when it comes to war and peace, the one guy who's supposed to be his top advisor on this is Pete Hegseth. Now, I don't know what General Kane, who's supposed to be his top uniformed advisor, I don't know what Kane's telling him. I imagine Kane's being very careful not to get fired and not to step over the line of appropriate civil-military relations. I'm guessing that when, like most chairmen, that when he's asked a question, he will answer. And I've seen this. Obviously, I spent a big part of my career around a lot of military officers. Probably says things like, "Well, yes, Mr. President, we can do." The rule when dealing with very senior people is you always say yes, but.
Right.
You never say no. You say yes, but here's the costs. Here's the risks. Here's what it would take. But that's not supposed to be, Kane's not supposed to be the guy tackling the president around the legs saying, stop doing this. That's supposed to be the Secretary of Defense, who's supposed to know his job, and the Secretary of State, who's supposed to clue him into the diplomatic costs of all this, and his national security advisor, which he doesn't have. That's Rubio. Rubio is the Secretary of State, and he's the national security advisor. So we think of this, and then I will get off this angry soapbox. We went into a war without a functional national security council, with a Secretary of State who's also the national archivist, apparently, a Secretary of Defense who has no idea what he's doing, a chairman of the Joint Chiefs who was never actually promoted to 4 stars, was brought in, got his 4-star, and handpicked to be Trump's guy, which puts him in a very delicate position. I mean, this thing, the question isn't why did it go wrong? The question is, how could it not have gone wrong?
Yeah, I look, consistently since November 24, I have said this is the gang that can't shoot straight, and that is ultimately what will save us in the end. It doesn't mean there's not going to be a lot of bull in
I was
a tank.
just going to say that.
Yeah, I mean, that's their incompetence is so monumental that it just creates nothing. It doesn't create effective policy. It creates nothing but chaos and drama, which is exhausting, and it could be dangerous depending upon what specifically we're talking about. But I think in the end, you're right. I think he's going to throw in the towel in his own mind, but it'll be positioned just the way you said it. It'll be positioned like we won. We don't need the straight. We got bigger fish to fry.
Gas prices come down a quarter.
Exactly.
He's going to say, I did it.
But see, here's his special sauce. He is so exhausting. The bullshit, the drama, and the chaos come at us so quickly every single day that if we pulled out of Iran today, by next Monday, there's going to be 15 other things we're all going to be talking about. And Iran ain't going to be one of them.
You read my mind, though, earlier when you said that's the thing that's going to save us. Because, and you and I have talked since then, but, a year and a half ago, I said, this is going to be bad. This is not a cabinet. This is a group of henchmen, basically. And, when we worried about things like the weaponization of the Justice Department, the abuse of the FBI, the militarization of domestic politics, all of those things, which are still all dangers, by the way. I mean, he's not giving up on any of that. But what's really struck me is how staggeringly stupid and incompetent some of the people around him have turned out to be. I mean, one of my colleagues wrote a really great profile about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, of Kash Patel, and pointed out this is the guy that will do anything for Trump. And I said that's what makes somebody dangerous. It's not that they are right wing or left wing or committed ideologues, or it's a guy who says, listen, it's the Luca Brasi thing, right? Whatever you want, Don Corleone. I just point me and I'll go. I did not expect that Patel would then become, enmeshed in like drinking games with the Olympic team and flying, his girlfriend around and going to concerts. I mean, I'm like, I don't know. I just somehow thought it was going to be a little more sinister, a little more complex than that. Hegseth, that's the one place where everything has gone the way I think we all expected it to go with Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, that it's been one bungle and screw up after another. And now we're in a major war. And that one, we could all see coming. But even the Justice Department, that there were some scary people that wanted to be part of that effort to weaponize the Justice Department, and one case after another where they just have to keep getting these ass kickings from judges and take their briefs back and say, yes, I'm sorry, Your Honor, we suck, none of us know how to write a brief, okay, and then they kind of slink back off. Now that doesn't mean that they haven't caused a lot of people a lot of pain. And a lot of misery.
Yeah, he's going after Lisa Cook again. I mean, like you said before, he's a child, so he got beat down on the ballroom today. So he's like, you know what? I'm gonna go back after Lisa Cook. I mean, we do have a toddler in the White House, but a toddler with like an Uzi.
Yeah, with Charlie Sykes said clowns with flamethrowers. A clown with a flamethrower. Not a good scenario. Is still a clown, but it is a flamethrower.
That's right.
And
John Wayne Gacy was a clown too.
Oh.
I had to.
But there is this kind of staggering incompetence involved that I think, and also the other thing that I didn't expect is that I knew he would be, on the warpath for revenge, and that he would try and undermine democracy and destroy the Constitution and all that stuff that he's trying to do. I didn't think how much of that he was willing to subordinate and push aside purely for the sake of money and corruption. Like he's not Don Corleone. He's not Tony Soprano. He's kind of like a low-level capo who, suddenly got a Cadillac and is
you know who he is
doing
also?
All the stupid things that Robert De Niro yells at you for doing with all that money.
I try to understand him from his brain, not mine, because mine is a little logical and rational. But I think Donald Trump he's acting the same way he did in the corner office of Trump.org. Except the problem is he's got co-equal branches of government. It's not a private business enterprise. That he has a spotlight on him that he never had before. Before, it was like, if I want the spotlight on me, I can get it. But if I don't, then I just go back into my office and do my corrupt shit. Although that's how he's running the country right now.
let's be careful about co-equal branches of government. Bill Cassidy said today
in
he's going to
theory.
vote for Todd Blanche.
Right. I was going to ask you about that.
I mean, what I don't know Senator Cassidy. I don't know Senator Cornyn. All I can say is that I think, given the way that Tillis and people who have left politics like Corker and Flake and others who just quit, they are afraid of their own constituents, and they don't want to go home and live among them. I mean, this is the part of the problem with the Republican Party, my former party, is I don't think we've ever had a time in history, and I'm stealing this point from George Will, where a major political party fears and hates its own voters. And so, Cassidy may say, well, fine, I'm out of here, but I don't want to get, when I get off the plane in New Orleans or Baton Rouge or wherever he's going back to, I don't want people yelling at me. And, that's just how it is. Tillis said that when he was thinking about voting against Hegseth, that he was getting death threats.
Yeah,
Who the hell issues a death threat over Pete Hegseth?
Somebody in a cult.
With these people?
Somebody in a cult.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. You can look at a constituency and say, okay, I need to cater to them. That's my voters. But this isn't a normal constituency. It's a cult. And it's a small number that have an outsized influence, because the number of people that I'm sure are calling Tom Tillis's office are, a tiny fraction, of the good people of his state. But they're enough to make his life miserable, and also to swing a primary, which is, why these guys are all getting out, because, with this is a conversation for another day, but the primary system is the source of all evil here, as far as I'm concerned. Well, he uses it as a tool.
Well, and for both parties, by the way. I mean, bring back smoke-filled rooms. I am totally, let the party regulars. Yeah,
Hey, Johnny.
Kid, I got bad news for you. The good news is you're gonna be a postmaster in Pennsylvania. The bad news is you're not gonna be a congressman. But I think that there is this fear of their own constituents, and also that they still somehow want to live in the ecosystem of, the Republican elites, the boards that they're going to be on, the circles they're going to travel in. And I think they don't realize that's just not going to happen, that it doesn't work. That's not the way the world is anymore. Just to go back to your point about running it like Trump the thing that's really screwing up the president's life is that when he says, go do that, he has a staff that will do it, which is like Trump world. He has pliant Republican cowards who will do that. So that's like Trump world. Problem is he's got a whole rest of the world.
But he also has Todd Blanche, who is like his personal Roy Cohn. I mean,
but there's also a lot of other people, especially if he loses in the midterms. Mm-hmm. But there's also a lot of other people in places like, I don't know, Europe, Asia, the Middle East. This is how it's going to be. And the Iranians go, yeah, no, we don't work for you.
But they want to make a deal. They keep
that's my order.
They keep calling him and they keep saying, "Sir, we want to make a deal." The Iranians want to make a deal.
That is probably that lie. I think when I wrote a piece about that a few weeks ago, that lie is now to something like 45 times.
I know, it's crazy.
It's crazy. But he doesn't understand that when he says the Strait of Hormuz is open. This is my decree.
Wait,
my order.
You have to say it like he says it. The Hormuz Strait.
No. And you got to do
the accordion.
Got to play the accordion.
The Hormuz. The Hormuz Strait.
It's open. It's a thing. But I can't do a good I perfected years of presidential imitations, and I can't get Trump because I always end up sounding like Alec Baldwin. I think we all end up sounding like Alec Baldwin, But he says that, and the Iranians go,
right,
it's open. Watch this.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they close it, and he doesn't. He has a very hard time comprehending a world where everybody.
Well, it's like your piece.
Has their own
it's literally the piece you just wrote. He is not living in the real world. He's delusional. Yeah. He's irrational. He has his own sense of reality. And again, to your point, he's got a bunch of supplicants around him who constantly tell the emperor he's got fascinating new clothes. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then a cult of how many people, millions of people in this country who will believe that, you know what, doesn't matter that the strait was open before. We don't need the strait. And if you ask them, why don't we need the strait, they won't be able to tell you, but they'll say, because Trump said it.
I was just back in my hometown. My brother just passed away a few weeks ago, and he had a long life, and I miss him. But I had to go back to my hometown to bury him, and I saw a bunch of my old friends, some of whom out in Western Massachusetts are Trump guys, and it's like it's almost impossible to have a conversation.
Not almost. You're being kind.
Well, I mean, some of these are people I love. I've known since childhood. And, that irrationality is something that kind of spreads to them because when you say something, like one of the immediate defenses that you're getting is, well, I didn't hear that. I'm like, you spend all day watching Fox.
Right. Of course you're not going to hear it.
You must have heard something. Even Fox is not completely isolated from what happens in the world. But it is amazing that I think part of what has empowered him, where I'm going with this long roundabout story, is that part of what empowers him is that when he says these delusional things, there are people out there who say, okay, yeah, okay, that must be true.
Yeah.
And, well, they want to make a deal. Or the other thing, and this was first time I've encountered this since the recent round of elections. I said, to one of my friends, I said, you can't possibly be happy. He's like, no, I'm pretty pissed. And what are we doing over in Iran? He said to me, what are we doing in Iran? I said, don't yell at me. This wasn't my I said, so, do you get it that this was all? He said, yeah, but what do you want, Mom Donnie? I'm like, what? It's this kind of weird, let me pick some random what about. And I kind of thought after all these years, some of that would peel away. But it is, I think now you're down to a very hardcore of people who, well, like a lot, I think the fact that he's down in the 30s, which is still amazing to me that he can get 38% support, but that he's that low now. Some people have peeled away, but the people that are going to be left are people who literally are never going to admit that they were conned. They're never going to admit that they were taken. There's a book that I will recommend to everybody from 1940 called The Big Con. It was the source material for The Sting, believe it or not. But it's really, if you really want to understand a lot of this, it's about the whole con game, and the author, who was a professor back in the 40s, interviewed all these people. He said, some people are so deep into the con that the marks, the people that were ripped off, would actually go to court to testify as character witnesses to the grifters who took them, because they were that determined never to admit that they'd been taken.
It's much easier to double and triple down.
Well, and it's cognitive dissonance. I can't have been that stupid. I can't have been that gullible. So I'm going to defend this guy, right to the very end, because otherwise, if I'm wrong about this, if what everybody else is saying is right, what does that make me? And I think that's where that's why our politics are getting even in some way harder edged right now, because those are the people that are left, the ones that just can't deal with what the reality of the situation. So they're going to join Trump in this kind of I don't know if you saw it. Speaking of irrational, I mean, there was even a piece today written by a guy at Heritage, long piece saying how we've won the Iran war. I know the guy who wrote it. He's a smart guy, but it's just part of it's an intelligent man, which means that either he has joined Trump in this kind of kookiness, or he's saying, I gotta support the team here. But there are going to be a lot of people who are going to read that and say, okay, I guess we won.
My last question, you mentioned the midterms before. So much of what we've talked about today could dramatically change if Congress changes hands. And it looks like not only the House, but the Senate could change hands. Do you think we're going to have a free and fair election? And if so, why?
Yes, because remember always that elections in this country are administered locally.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that when people say we have rigged elections in this country, every person who says that is taking a dump on their neighbor,
Mm-hmm.
on volunteers, on people in their town halls
Mm-hmm.
or their city hall or their, local county executive. Those are the people that count votes. It's not like there's like this blue state, cabal and, that meets at the Meadows, and decides how many votes. It just isn't like that. Yes, I think we're going to have a free and fair election. The question is whether Trump will accept it.
Mm-hmm.
And whether he will start claiming fraud and talk about seizing voting machines and trying to militarize polling places. So I say free and fair, assuming that he doesn't send the National Guard to stand between voters and polling places, which I was worried about a year ago. I'm less worried about it now because I think people, especially after Minnesota and, this kind of fizzle in DC, I don't think people are going to really put up with that. I hope. What I'm more worried about at this point really is I don't agree with you that I think the Senate, I think after what happened in Maine and I think with El-Sayed in Michigan, I think that the Republicans probably are feeling comfortable now about that, kind of 1 vote or 2 vote margin that they can hang on to. I hope I'm wrong, but I think the House is definitely going to flip and he knows it. And I think the president's panicked about that. He doesn't care about Republicans. He doesn't care about policy. He cares about how many investigations are going to be, oversight committees, subpoenas, all the things that will make his life miserable. And it also means that he's cooked in terms of anything he wants. That he will try for the last 2 years to just rule by executive order.
Yeah.
Because he won't be able to get anything through Congress.
The thing about Michigan that it will be interesting is, if El-Sayed moves to the center a little bit and just keeps talking about affordability and the common issues that the people are experiencing at their kitchen table. And at the same time, Rogers is in a tough spot, and he has to distance himself. Like, he has to talk to Michiganders and say, I understand that you're feeling pain. And he has to acknowledge that pain. And he also has to blame that pain on somebody. And so how much can he go against Trump? How much is he willing to go against Trump?
Rogers he's not a standard issue, MAGA goon. I mean, he's been around for a long time. He's known, he almost clipped Alyssa Slotkin, by 20,000 votes. And, El-Sayed's got a lot of stuff, including some unsavory associations that's going to be great fodder for ads. I think I was having an argument with somebody online about El-Sayed and noting that, he underperformed dramatically in the places he will need the most, like the Black community in Detroit. That's a bad sign. That's a red flag. But it's also possible that by November, Trump will be so toxic. We say Trump will be so toxic, which, it seems incredible that he would become even more toxic.
But he manages to find a way to do that, doesn't he?
Boy,
every day
that limbo bar gets lower and lower. He just manages to. But it's also it's possible that carries a lot of weaker candidates right over if it's a blue tsunami instead of a blue wave, then a lot of things could happen, including the Senate flipping. I'm not sure we're there. And I'm not I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I am an observer, and the Democrats need to get their house in order. They need to get Dems in disarray. I know, but this is a really crucial election, and they are kind of in disarray. On the other hand, the Republicans are a hot mess. Yes, I was surprised yesterday, not that I follow Tennessee politics, but no matter what you can say about this next Congress, it won't have Andy Ogles in it. that's a, okay.
Yeah.
The idea that there are people in Tennessee who literally had enough of Andy Ogles was, to me,
I think this November we're going to be surprised by a lot because we're in an historically unusual place in this country, and I think more people than not have had enough.
I hope you're right.
Yeah. Tom, always a pleasure. Great insights. Come back soon.
Sure. Thanks, Amy. Thanks for having me.
Take care. This episode was produced and edited by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-produced by Matty Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud for Radio Free Rhiniecliff, with additional editing by Matty Rosenberg, music by Andrew Hollander, and graphic design by Cricket Lengyel. And with a special thanks to our sponsor, The Epicurean. Again, thanks for listening. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Back Room with Andy Ostroy YouTube channel, where you can watch full videos of our interviews. See you next time.